So, in the last series of videos, we talked a lot about why you're not finding award flights. We talked about how it's not your fault. But now the real question is, what do you actually do when nothing shows up? We know now that this is where everybody gets stuck. And honestly, this is kind of where we all give up. There are times where I just remember sitting there running the same search over and over again, the same route, the same days, same airline, search, nothing, search, nothing. Constantly refreshing it, thinking that one refresh is going to make the difference. And I just kept thinking to myself, well, I guess these flights really don't exist. After refreshing enough times, I started realizing that I wasn't searching anymore. I was just hoping. And that, my friends, is the trap. So, on today's video, I want to show y'all something much more useful than hoping. I want to show you a framework that I go by when I look for flights. Because once you see this and you start understanding, you'll stop getting stuck and you'll start making progress. Think of this framework like a bunch of levers. Every time you don't see something that you like or that you're searching for, don't stop there, just pull a lever. The more levels you pull, the more willing you are to adjust. And the more willing you are to adjust, the more options that you unlock. Now, the first lever that I'm going to talk to you about today is your airport. Like I talked about in a previous video, most people are actually flying from the wrong airport. This is typically your home airport or the airport that's the closest, and it could be the most convenient for you. People treat this airport like it's locked. It's a fixed location that will never change. You think, I live here, so of course I have to fly from here. That one belief is the small adjustment that we're going to make. Let's say you're trying to go to Tokyo from San Francisco. We all know that you search SFO to Tokyo, right? Your search lands you nothing. So most people conclude, I guess there's no availability. But when you pull this first lever, we're going to expand a little bit. Instead of just searching from San Francisco, you're going to search the nearby airports. Let's check LAX, let's check Seattle. Now, suddenly, instead of finding no availability and no flights, something pops up and you get a little bit of hope. This is the moment where I really want you to pause because this is important. You didn't just find a new flight, those flights have always been there. In this case, you just weren't looking in the right place. That nearest, most convenient airport that's locking you in is essentially what's making it so much more difficult for you. And that's just Tokyo, for example. We can also try going to Europe. Everybody wants to go to Paris. You search SFO to Paris. Instead of that, when you find nothing, you can search from San Francisco to Amsterdam or San Francisco to London. With those small adjustments to the airports that you're now flying to, more doors are being opened for you. You're not just changing your trip, you're changing the access point. Think about this every time you try and book your dream flight or any award flight, especially if it's international. Now that we got that first lever locked in, it's time to start talking about the second lever, and that is the dates. And the funny thing is, everybody knows that the dates matter. You just don't realize exactly how much it matters. Using the San Francisco to Tokyo example, or even the San Francisco to Europe example, you can search on June 10th and come to find out that there's no availability. Sometimes there's only one flight and it could be very expensive, whether cash or points. With this lever, try searching the very next day or the day before that. What you'll realize is you now have so many more options to go off of. You could even have multiple flights depending on what day you search. That 1 day difference gives you a completely different outcome. Now let's stack that with searching weekdays versus weekends. You can also factor in peak travel, so specific times of the year where we all know everyone wants to go to Tokyo or Paris. You can also factor in holidays. All of those things completely affect the availability and it affects that access that we were talking about earlier. And this is where everyone gets stuck because they say to themselves, well, I have to travel on those exact days, especially because I may have requested them off already. But you have to understand the trade off. Less flexibility means less options. Availability isn't consistent. We all know how scattered it is. And that's where the dates play a crucial role in finding that access we were talking about. And that's why being flexible on the days is incredibly important. So we talked about the home airport, we talked about being flexible on the days, and now we're going to talk about that third lever. And this is probably the most important one. The third lever is what cabin you fly. Now, I will say I am a bit guilty of this, but I've been in the business or bust mentality recently. It's made things quite difficult for me, especially when it comes to planning all of my trips. You get into the points and miles game thinking to yourself, if I'm not flying business class, then what's the point? Literally. For that Tokyo trip that I mentioned earlier from San Francisco, you noticed that when searching business class, there was no availability. Everything was sadly waitlisted. Even when you search different days, and also when you search from different airports like LAX, everything was unavailable. When you go back and search a different class, you notice that economy is wide open and there's even some premium economy seats as well. So now it's decision time. What would you do in this situation? Would you wait? Would you keep searching like I've been searching? Or would you book it and take what's available? Experienced travelers will book mixed cabin to lock it in. We'll book economy when needed, and then we'll try and upgrade or even rebook later. Or we'll just try and optimize the return flight or another part of the trip. Something that my sister actually said often is getting in economy is still getting there. We're on the same plane, it's going to take the same amount of time, and we're probably all going to be exhausted after this trip. So lock it in, make sure that you keep that flexibility so that way you can enjoy this trip and not have to worry. With all that being said, there's still a fourth lever that we're going to pull, and that is booking round trips versus booking one ways. How you search is a game changer. Forcing yourself to book a round trip flight for the cost or for the points, it could be a pretty big mistake. It could also benefit you in a lot of cases if you know the availability is there. When you're searching for a round trip flight, you are asking for two perfect flights to exist at the exact moment where you need them to. What will typically happen is you'll find one of those two flights with ease. And when you're trying to book that second flight or select the second flight, whether it's inbound or outbound, the price will skyrocket or it's not available, or there's these really amazing layovers that you really just don't want to do. When you start running into those issues, the whole trip starts looking impossible. The interesting thing is, when you find that low hanging fruit in that round trip, why don't you try searching one way? You found an easy and very convenient flight on the way there or on the way back. So why don't you just lock it in as a one way? After that, you can then figure out what to do with the next flight. The important thing here is it lets you do a lot of things that keeps you flexible. It lets you mix and match airlines. It lets you mix programs. It also even lets you mix different airports, especially if the airline is available in one and not the other. There's definitely moments where booking a round trip flight could be more convenient and cost effective. However, in this case, we're not talking about convenience. We're talking about the struggles that people go through when they look through these flights. So, this is where being able to pivot between round trip flights and one way flights could be that game changer that you've been looking for. And finally, as I mentioned it earlier, not many people like layovers. Everyone wants a nonstop flight in a business class seat from their home airport on this exact day, right? It sounds great, but now we're also relying on the five things that we've talked about to be perfect. And as you and I already know, it's not the case. With nonstop flights, you're looking for potentially fewer routes on fewer airlines, and it's not always offered on the days where you think you might need it. In addition to that, you're not the only one who's looking for these nonstop flights. What happens if there's no nonstop flight between SFO and Tokyo? What happens if there's no nonstop flights between SFO and Europe, like Paris, for example? For Tokyo, you can stop off in Taipei. You can stop off in South Korea. Suddenly, everything starts working. Now, I understand that you may not want to lay over there or travel there, and you want to just go straight to Tokyo. This was actually something that I learned on my way back from Bali. I had about a 3 to 4 hour layover in Singapore. And what we ended up doing was we completely canceled the flight and we booked a one way from Bali to Singapore and then another one from Singapore to San Francisco. That completely opened the door because what we realized was 3 days later, there was availability in premium economy from Singapore to San Francisco. Now, that's not business class, but premium economy is still incredibly convenient. And at the end of the day, like I said earlier, we're all going to be on that plane for 17 hours. We got to spend time in Singapore, and it was really great. That one small change with that layover made a huge difference in our vacation. Now, thinking about all those levers that I just talked about, you don't just use one lever, you stack all of the levers. So instead of SFO on exact dates in business class, on a round trip flight, on a nonstop flight, you start making small changes until everything just clicks together. You shift to looking at multiple airports, whether it's flying out of them or into them. You start shifting your dates and being a little bit more flexible. So that could be the day before or after, sometimes even a couple days. Look for multiple cabins. So you can obviously start with business class, but then look for premium economy and look for economy as well. If you find a flight in that round trip that's a low hanging fruit that's incredibly easy and convenient, book it as a one way and then try booking the second one way on the way back. And oftentimes, the flight with a layover could actually be the most convenient for you. Now, those are not small adjustments, those are completely different searches. You have the same goal, now you're getting different results. Most people just run one search, don't see anything, and stop. That's not searching, that's hoping. Don't quit after just one search because in award travel, the people who win aren't the ones with the most points. They're the ones who can pull the most levers.